Okay, we could get started.
Sure.
All right. Do you like that?
That's awesome. I love that.
That's what you call a low-budget show.
That's awesome.
Okay. So 20 years ago, my guest joining me in studio began his career, and 20 years later, he is one of the finest broadcasters this nation has to offer. I'm so proud that his agent screwed up and that he's here in studio. I'm here with George Stroumboulopoulos.
Good to see you, bud.
Television.
How are you?
Thanks for doing this.
Dude, I watched your show on YouTube one night, and one day at work, and I was like, I want to go be on that show.
Yeah, well, you made it.
Thank you very much.
You got past our bookers.
I did, yeah.
I don't know how.
They're very lovely people. He runs a compound here, right? So we're kind of holed away in one part of it. Like, not unlike a dictator, you sort of got your space.
Hey, I'm Iranian. It's in our blood to be dictators.
You said that, no?
Yeah, I said that.
Yeah.
So 20 years ago...
Yeah. Do you know how I started 20 years ago? You know what my first job was?
I was just going to ask you that. What was your first job?
My first job was, I was going to Humber College for radio, and there was a guy there named Martin who had this really cool idea, which was he was going to start a radio station, and he wanted to do it in a mall. So Albion Mall, which is a neighborhood not too far from these studios. I mean, it's a bit of a jaunt, but not that far, relatively speaking. He set up some kind of closed circuit radio station. I forget what it was called, like CKCC, I think, Christmas carols, and it broadcast only in the Albion Mall. You could hear it in the parking lot, and it went through the intercom.
Of the mall?
Of the mall. So what you'd play Christmas carols for the holiday shoppers, and then we would do cut-ins where we would backsell the songs that we had played, but we would do commercials for the stores in the mall. So Martin would sell ads to the Hallmark. So he would sell ads to the sports store, and I would come out going, that was Wilson Phillips. Martin loved Wilson Phillips, so it was a lot of Wilson Phillips. And I would say, by the way, if you've got 20 minutes, if you make it to the Sport Check, there's going to be a 15% off on this particular product. Or get your wrapping over here. So he would sell stuff, and that was December of 1992. So 20 years ago this Christmas is where I started.
Is when you started. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So that same year was the year that the Blue Jays won the World Series.
Yep.
Do you remember that?
Of course I remember that. The very first year that they won the World Series, I watched, they beat Atlanta, and we were watching them inside the Skydome. The game, they won in Atlanta, so the Skydome opened up. And broadcast on the Jumbotron. So I watched the first year. The next year I was standing in front of 333 Yonge Street, which was, HMV was a powerhouse in downtown Toronto at that time on Yonge. And had these big walls of video outside, and myself and thousands of people just stood there and just super drunk and watched Wild Thing throw that pitch to Joe Carter where he rocked it. So yeah, those Blue Jays memories for sure.
Wow. And 20 years ago I was born too.
20 years ago. When were you born?
1992, February 17th. So same day as Michael Jordan.
February 17th.
Yeah. So
you were alive when the Jays won.
Yeah.
And you were alive when I was on the radio.
Exactly. I like to think my birth had a lot to do with your success.
I'm not saying it didn't. I don't know enough to say that it didn't.
So 20 years you get like nostalgic, of course. It's a big number. So looking back on the success, you've talked very openly about your success. Do you think it was the right place at the right time or your hard work?
I've talked about my success. How do you mean? I don't feel like it's success.
I've heard, exactly. This is what I'm referring to. Yeah, it's like you have a very interesting perspective about your success.
I think you have to be so lucky to be, and I know people say this is a cliche, but it really is, man, because talent is kind of overrated, and so is work ethic as it relates to your success. Like, you need to work really hard, and you hopefully are talented on some level, but that's really like 30-40% of it.
Right.
And the rest is luck. You need a whole bunch of people who don't have any reason to care about you or don't have any reason to take a flyer on you. They're going to take one. You got to get a break. You got to get a million breaks to be successful in this business. And
the right eyes, the right cab you catch at the right time.
At the right time, but you also have to make sure that the thing you do in your demo, that spark, if it comes alive and it comes across on camera, the person watching it is open to it that day. There's so many things. I have countless rejection letters. Countless rejection letters. I don't have any more, but I did. That they would, because I didn't keep them, but people that would just constantly tell you, no, you're not ready, no, you're not ready. And then all of a sudden you are ready, but when did you get ready? Right? It's just that this person didn't think you're ready when these people did.
Right.
So, talent saves you in big moments. Work ethic saves you in big moments. But basically, work ethic and luck are what get you there.
I see.
Right?
Yeah.
It's in that special moment in an interview where you ask just the right question the right way when you plan it. That's where your talent, covers you.
Exactly.
Has your legs. But other than that, most of it just comes from hard work and luck.
Right. Okay, I want to show you a picture right now.
Yeah.
I just want you to explain what's going on in this picture, okay?
No.
Tell me what
that's
all about.
Okay, so
we're gonna put that so our viewers
full
can
screen?
see, yeah.
Okay,
So tell us a little bit about
this. So this is 1995.
Right.
I would have been, at this point I was 23 years old.
Right.
23 years, that's me with the long hair at 23. And my long johns. That's Bob Mackos Jr., who's on TSN radio now.
Yeah, 4 to 7, Sobalski and Company, great guy.
Right. And that's Jeff Merrick, who's on Sportsnet.
Right.
And Rob and the Fan. Now, so we started doing a radio show. At this point I was a movie theater usher and drove a forklift at the airport. And I worked at a bookstore at the airport.
Oh my goodness.
He was a trumpet player in a band, Bob, and Jeff was a gravedigger at the Park Lawn Cemetery. I believe the first person he ever buried was Harold Ballard. You should ask him. So we got this late night show called Game.
Right.
1 o'clock in the morning. This was it. We always said we would do the show naked if we had the opportunity, but also we used to say things on the air that used to drive some of the more traditional sports guys wild, because we weren't misogynists, we weren't homophobes,
yeah,
we weren't racist. Sports media has a little bit of that.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times it's not malicious, but there's we could see there was a real cultural shift coming.
Yeah.
We could really see with the NBA, the way reporters were talking about basketball players. And there's some things that made Bob and I and Jeff a little uncomfortable. So we knew that if we took our clothes off, those guys would never come in our studio to give us hell for what we were doing. And so that was sort of the emotional reason we did it, but also because we were fun and kind of wild and crazy. We talked about it on the air and we were kids. This show here is the biggest thing I've done in my life in terms of my business, my career. This show set the stage for everything that I do now. What I'm like on TV now on CBC, a lot of it comes from here.
Was it like your training ground? Was
Yeah.
it like a place where you could make mistakes and learn from them and
Totally.
stuff like that?
But it was also a place where, and this is what's really important, what's missing from most media now. It wasn't just a place where you could make mistakes. It was a place where you could actually explore.
I see.
You have to push yourself. You have to push your ability by learning a dynamic, with being on the air with a couple other people.
Right.
By trying crazy things. Right? Crazy things. Making a mistake doing the basics is not that interesting to me. That just over time, it's called mic time, right? Just over mic time, just a little repetition, you'll get that stuff, most of it worked out of your system.
Right.
But to really develop this part of your brain, right? That part of those arbitrary parts of your brain that allow you to come up with one great idea that lasts for a long time, or have a sense of humor that a lot of other people don't get to develop on the air, that's what you need. Practice will eventually take care of mistakes. But where you get the opportunity to really explore and push yourself where there are stakes. Being on the radio, a new talk radio station, the only sports radio station in the market, basically the only sports radio station in the country. There was something in Vancouver, it wasn't like the Fan, right?
Right.
And this was a place where you had stakes. People were listening. I still get people once a week will talk to me about something we did on that show. And it was 20 years ago at 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning.
Wow, so in a way this was like a really groundbreaking time for all three of you actually.
Oh man, that show is the reason why we do what we do now. There's no doubt about it.
So, as a comedian, I heard Chris Rock say in an interview that it took him 10 years to get to the level of expertise that he has now. In his mind, it took him 10 years to get that good.
Yes.
So, my question to you is, how long do you think it took you to get a handle of the medium? To be like, you know what? I've got it now. This is it. I think...
I don't know, because halfway through, he did one thing, right? Stand up.
Right.
And when he acted, it was comedy. I did radio, and I've done radio for 20 years. So, but 10 years into radio, I added TV to the mix. So, that kind of changes up your routine.
Right.
And changes up your development. So, radio, I feel really comfortable on the radio now. I was comfortable the moment I went on, but now I can see and hear the comfort.
What's alluring about radio to you? Because it's, in the face of podcasts and online, distribution, it's kind of falling behind, especially terrestrial radio. What keeps you going back to radio? Why should people still tune into radio?
Because radio is a collective experience.
Right.
And a podcast is an individual experience. So everybody watching or listening to stuff that they downloaded, listen to it alone when they're ready.
Yeah.
That's fine. But radio, everybody who's listening and experiencing it is experiencing it at the same time. And so if you want to live a life where you get to push your imagination and you want to feel like you're a part of something and you want to share a song, the radio is where you share a song to everybody at once. Now, I like broadcasting. People can stream our show whenever they want, and more people stream our show than listen to it live. But I'll always do a show if I can have just one group of people listening. It's like one group here, one group there, one group there. Collectively, when I play that Radiohead song, or I play that Drake song, or I play that spiritualized song, or I play that beautifully underappreciated hip song, or you play that Japandroid song, I know that everybody who's listening at the same time is sharing it. I like that idea. Radio is such a sharing experience.
It's theater of the mind, right?
It's theater of the mind, but it's theater of togetherness, right? It's people, because you can have a theater of the mind on a podcast. You can have your own experience, but it's not as interesting to me to know that it's about the one person alone. I like thinking about the person listening as an individual, but I also like thinking about them in the context of the group they're with. That to me is so unique.
So now anybody...
Here's an example.
Yeah.
Here's an example.
Yeah.
Follow Twitter when there's a sporting event on, right?
Yeah.
And see what happens when people get to share the moment together. Watch it, one of those idol shows or The Voice or whatever, right? During a big results show. Watch the exchange online. That's where it's at, man. It's collective experience. It's us together. It's us communicating, right?
Right.
First thing you do when you watch a big game now, boom, get on Twitter, start seeing what people are saying, retweeting, hashtagging, engaging in the conversation.
Right. For
those who can't watch the game or watch this particular TV episode, you're there sharing it for them, right? You can't really do that in a podcast format. It just doesn't, it's not what it's about, right?
Right.
And so I love the idea of doing that with everybody at the same time.
So now anybody with a camera can start a show from their bedroom. With the advent of YouTube and Facebook and Twitter, you could get your name out there more easier than ever. Do you invite that kind of thing, or do you think, no, you should go into training, you should really, do you like it the way it was back then, or do you invite the idea?
I think you need both. I really do. No, I love this. I love that. I think this is cool if you stream it live. Stakes. You can stream this live and you have real stakes in that moment. It's harder to handle live feedback when you're doing a show.
You've done an incarnation of your show live, haven't you?
We started live.
You started live.
Everything I did was live up until the last few years.
Right.
Right? Yeah, of course it was live.
Did you enjoy the live aspect?
Man, live is way better than tape.
Yeah.
Live is way better than tape. Always will be as an experience. But as an hour-long talk show, in a 22-minute show where editing is fine, then you need editing, then you can't do it. So I don't mind the taped experience as well. But I love all this. This here is a chance for people to practice, because basically when all the radio stations were swallowed up by a couple of companies who only care about shareholder value and they don't really put an emphasis on development of talent, where are you going to get better? There's no place for you to go on the air and do what I did when I was 20 years ago. It's very difficult, but you still need to practice. So that's what this is really good for. But you still want training, because training allows you. It's like principles, right? It's like you have the Robert McKee book over there, right? Do you have the book Story? Did I see that there?
What book?
I thought I saw it. You had a book.
What color was it?
Is it called? Let me see. No, you don't have it. I thought I saw it somewhere. I saw it. It's a book called Story, which is the difference between a rule and a principle.
Right.
Right. And a rule is do this, and a principle is this is what works. A principle of training is this is what works. Practice, get feedback. You need feedback. You need coaching. By paying for your college, you feel like you have to get something out of it, right? You're more focused on it.
Yeah.
You have to be there every day. So when you're feeling lazy and you don't feel like making a podcast, you still have to be there. So I do think it's good to have both.